So welcome everyone to the August TELedvisors webinar for 2018. Our theme today is openness, roughly, and I'm really excited to have the three presenters that we've got today.
Next presenter is Tim Klapdor, and so he'll put his slides up just like that. Amazing. So Tim, I'll let you briefly introduce yourself and then go ahead.
Cool. So my name's Tim Klapdor. I'm the online learning technology leader at Imagine, which is the digital kind of innovations lab at Charles Sturt University. So I guess I've been working on the fringes of openness for probably the last 5 or 6 years, and mainly working in the kind of technology area. And I guess that's what interests me, is that technology that underpins the open movement. And it's always surprised me some of the choices that have been made in that space. I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of use of PDFs, and it's become almost like the default way of distributing and disseminating open resources. And now PDFs do all the openness in terms of access. You can print them, you can view them, you can store them on pretty much every device imaginable. But they also have quite a few issues around them. In particular around content and display, that they actually tie the content to the display. So the reason that PDF became such a well-known and well-used format was that you could ensure that it looks the same across devices and systems. It didn't matter what fonts were installed or what resolution screen, it would all kind of look pretty much the same. But that also creates quite a lot of issues when it comes to reuse. And so anyone that's kind of gone through and actually done, a copy and paste out of a PDF document probably understands that what you get isn't necessarily what you thought you'd get. You'd get a lot of kind of janky text coming across, lots of forced line breaks. There's headers and footers that are included in the content. There's footnotes and references that get lost. And a lot of the links and embedded files are missing as well from just that kind of copy and paste bit. So, what do we kind of use? There websites. Well, that's another kind of really useful way. You can get a lot of access issues to that, but also that has its problems in that you're requiring someone to have an internet access. And so a lot of kind of push for open resources is because anyone can access them, particularly those in poor and developing countries. So getting them to rely on having a online connection is pretty it isn't necessarily making them as open as they should be. But also there's the database issue, that quite often the sites use a backend with a database, and this makes the reality of reusing and remixing these sites incredibly difficult, because you're dealing with the front end, the kind of published format, not necessarily the kind of raw and original file. So making edits, remixing is quite difficult to do, and you can't let people access the database because that's essentially what hacking is. So that's not going to work either. So over the last couple of years, I've been kind of switching some of the projects that I've been doing to a much kind of simpler stack. And I think that it's got some real answers to some of these questions around improving open content and the kind of practices around it. So the first one for me is Markdown, which is a simple plain text version of a HTML markup. You can create simple formatting. You've got all your heading levels, lists, italics and bold and all that kind of stuff. And so it allows you to do that. You can create references in documents. And one of the big things is that it's pretty agnostic. It doesn't actually require a specific app to use or to read or to access. So Markdown is a really kind of useful tool for getting content, for structuring it, and allowing it to be kind of just plain text. It's not kind of tied to anything really kind of crazy. The next step is using GitHub. And so GitHub provides a really nice way of managing open projects. While its main use has been that technical side used by programmers, the underlying technology, which is Git, is incredibly powerful version control system. So for open projects, this means that content can be posted, it can then be co-authored, it can be co-edited, it can be distributed, it can be shared, it can be remixed and recreated. And the really interesting bit, once you've kind of got Git, is that someone can go and take your original content, remix it, repurpose it, and then actually allow you to kind of put that back into the original version of it, which is, incredibly powerful way of thinking about how we could make, content and resources that are open and that really do capitalize on the kind of 5 R's of open. And then the final piece of this is using a static site generator. And so this is kind of a bit of technology which allows you to kind of import those Markdown documents and then publish them into a simple HTML website. And now there's a whole heap of these available at the moment for kind of any language that you can kind of imagine. They've kind of got different grades of difficulty in using. But the real power here is that it's not reliant on the content. You can kind of plug in content and those Markdown files and use them in your static site, so the one that you choose or that your institution uses. And with a bit of tweaking, you can kind of go through and change that. But also, you could submit that whole static site onto GitHub, and so anyone can then go in, and then if they wanted to kind of just change the look, they wanted to change the colors, they wanted to add their own logos, you can just get in there and change a few settings in the CSS, and all of a sudden you've got an actual resource that's ready to go, and it's been remixed and repurposed for your institution. So my work at the moment, I've been using Markdown and then GitHub, and then I've been using Jekyll as the static site generator. And I've also been playing around with Forestry, which actually allows you to have like a GUI CMS style user interface for Jekyll. And there's a couple of sites. There's the CSU Online Learning Exchange, which is a site we've developed to kind of explain and for PD purposes around our online learning model. And the new Your Mentioned website, which I just kind of finished building, is also built using that same underlying technology. Some other examples, Paul Hibberts has done a lot of work around Grav as his tool, but he's done a lot of work and a lot of blog posting about how you can go through and actually use these tools and then embed them within your LMS. He's done a lot of work with Canvas in particular, but the same kind of principles work fairly well and fairly easily across whether you're using Moodle or Blackboard or anything else that's out there. So the point here is that I think that using these kinds of tools can really reduce the technical overheads required to actually access, edit, and remix materials. I think there's a lot of workflow that's required in open educational resources that doesn't necessarily have to be there. We could simplify some of those systems, use things like Markdown, and allow people to kind of use the tools that they've got access to. I think one of the key problems that I've looked at in terms of OER is that reuse component. Like, is it getting reused? Is it actually changing? Are people adopting it? Particularly when there's things like branding attached. If it's just a PDF, it's really hard and difficult to actually change things. PDF documents aren't editable, so it's really difficult to kind of do that reuse component to it. And then finally, there's that idea of kind of being able to repurpose that stuff. Allowing it to kind of actually move between systems, to embed it within your LMS, to use your branding colors. Those kind of simple things that allow an OER to become part of the course that you're teaching at the institution that you're kind of using. So yeah, that's basically kind of what I've kind of been looking at in terms of some of that technology. I haven't kind of delved into actually how this could actually be used and built and done that. I haven't had a project or an opportunity to really get into that space at the moment, but I'm kind of sharing, I guess, my technology stack and how things have been really working for me. So I'll just leave that slide up there if anyone's kind of interested in the static site generators and what's in there, and then a couple of links to the Learning Exchange. And then if you actually want to see it in GitHub and have a dig around to see how that all works, you can actually go onto the site there as well. So that's it from me in terms of the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions that people have got.
Great, thanks so much, Tim. That was really good. So does anyone else have questions for Tim before he goes or before he stays for the next presentation? So if we could have a round of applause for Tim and his presentation.
Thank you.